The Memphis Grizzlies lost a basketball game on Wednesday night, but more importantly than that, they lost an opportunity to get better for the season to come. I'm going to explain my thoughts on that and more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. I am Joe Mullinax, and this is Locked On Grizzlies. Happy to be with you whenever you're taking in the show. Again, post-game, we're going to try something a little bit different this year, whether it's myself or DeMichael, sometimes both of us. Going to get the episode out as quickly as we can after a contest and see how things go. Thank you for being with me, whether you're checking it out late on Wednesday night, or maybe you're with us, as always, on a Thursday morning or afternoon, however you're taking in the show. We appreciate you, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Hopefully you're liking, you're commenting, you're rating, reviewing, subscribing. You're making us a part each and every time an episode drops of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. You've become an everydayer, I'm sure, or if this is your first time coming through, we hope that you will become an everydayer and check out each and every time an episode drops with us here on Locked On Grizzlies. DeMichael Cole, my co-host, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, not with us on this edition of the show. He will be with you to close out the week on Friday. You know you got to get down on a Friday here on Locked On Grizzlies. He will continue to do just that with you this coming week, this coming next episode, I should say. And I've got you here today. And it's probably a good thing that I'm solo on this edition of the show, because DeMichael and I disagreed a little bit yesterday. For those of you that were with us on the program, ways we were looking at the game ahead when it came to the Boston Celtics, both of us were wrong, because Tuomas Isalo put a complete nuclear bomb to whatever the interpretation of this basketball game was supposed to be. The Memphis Grizzlies lost the game. They lost to the Celtics 121-103. That is meaningless. It's meaningless even if everybody played for the Memphis Grizzlies, because it is a preseason game. But here's a list of the names that did not play in the contest. Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant, Zach Edey. Those were all names that we weren't expecting to play because they are injured and currently out. Jock Landale did not play. Ty Jerome did not play. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope did not play. Scottie Pippen Jr. did not play. So that means that we saw 20 minutes for Lawson Loverling in perhaps the only game he will ever start with the Memphis Grizzlies. It means that we saw 18 minutes for John Conchar, which is probably 18 minutes too many at this point. If you're a fan of Locked On Grizzlies, you've been around for a while, you know my take on Johnny basketball. 17 minutes for Braxton Key. Braxton Key of Exhibit 10 contract likely. Fame that will be a member of the Memphis Hustle in 3 weeks, if not sooner. But that Braxton Key logged 17 minutes for the Memphis Grizzlies in this contest. Starting lineup of Santi Aldama, Jaylen Wells, Javon Small, Lawson Loverling, and Cedric Coward. And we'll talk a little bit more about Cedric here in a moment. But of everybody that played significant minutes in this contest, there were 2, maybe 3 actual rotation players for this Grizzlies team when everybody is active and healthy and on the court together. And that is where I say that the Memphis Grizzlies missed an opportunity on Wednesday night. And maybe it's not the most important opportunity. Maybe it doesn't matter to you that players like Scottie Pippen Jr. and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Ty Jerome, Jock Landale, healthy scratches. Maybe that's not significant to you. Maybe you think you're making a very big deal out of something that is very small, Joe. I really want to stress how much I disagree with the way that the organization handled Wednesday night. And I'm going to start with Cedric Coward. Not because I thought Cedric played terribly. I thought Cedric did some good things. Again, if you're worried about his shot not going in the preseason in particular, but especially for a rookie who has not played a ton of meaningful basketball in the last 18 months or so, I am not concerned about that. The shot will eventually fall. He works too hard. He's too talented. We've seen too many examples of it. He's not going to shoot over in many games moving forward. So the fact that this guy was 4 for 13 from the field, 0 for 5 from 3, Not the end of the world. And again, I'm going to talk about Cedric more throughout the episode. But I'm leading off with him to start the show because I have a simple question that I would love for somebody in the comments. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. Answer this for me. Riddle me this. How in the heck is Cedric Coward supposed to get better when Javon Small and Lawson Loverling are getting 29 and 20 minutes respectively next to him? How is he supposed to get better? How is he supposed to improve if the primary creators of offense, which has been one of DeMichael's biggest concerns all offseason leading into the preseason, no Ja Morant, no Ty Jerome, no Scottie Pippen Jr. in this contest. Javon Small could very well be a good basketball player. He struggled in this game. He's on a two-way contract. How is Cedric Coward supposed to get a look at what his potential role could be, what he is capable of, getting comfortable in an NBA system? How is that possible when you're playing the minutes that you're playing with the guys that you're playing them with? And yeah, Santi Aldama was out there. He competed 25 minutes, did some good things, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 turnovers, too many of those. But you guys know, if you're an everydayer, how I feel about turnovers. 22 is way too many. The Celtics only had, 13 for comparison's sake. So the Grizzlies lose the turnover battle by about 9 or so. How is Cedric Coward supposed to get into a rhythm? How is he supposed to improve? And why in the world are we saying that Jock Landale, who has been on record saying that he was on the bench, and that's one of the reasons he chose to come to Memphis, was to play. And again, it's a preseason game. I don't need anybody to yell at me in the comments about how I'm putting too much stock in a preseason game. If Ja Morant doesn't play a single preseason game, I could care less. I could care less. If LeBron James for the Los Angeles Lakers doesn't play a single preseason game, he's in his 23rd NBA season. What are we talking about? Do we need to watch Ja Morant or LeBron James play basketball in the preseason? I don't. You know who I would like to see play some basketball? Ty Jerome, who completely flamed out in the postseason against the Indiana Pacers. And it's one of the reasons that he was available at the number that he was available for in free agency to come to Memphis in the first place. I would like to see some more of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who, despite the fact he's going into his 13th NBA season, is a bit underwhelming in terms of what his 12th was with the Orlando Magic. I would like to see Scottie Pippen Jr., especially if you're not going to play Ty Jerome, because who is the initiator of offense? Who is going to be the calm in the storm? Who is going to allow for players like a Cedric Coward and others to have the chance to find their spots more organically and in rhythm of a basketball game, as opposed to things being forced, which happened numerous times against the Celtics? And why in the world do we need to have Jock Landale getting a breather when you have limited bigs in your rotation already due to injury? Never mind the fact that the Memphis Grizzlies do not play again until Saturday. We're not talking about a back-to-back. We're not talking about 3 games in 4 nights. The Memphis Grizzlies played on Monday, played on Wednesday. They don't play again until Saturday. So one of the positives coming out of all of this is they have plenty of time to practice, and goodness knows they need it, because they look disjointed on both ends of the court more often than not in the game. But you can write that off as this is preseason basketball, and you can write that off as these games don't matter. I would argue when it comes to a young man like Cedric Coward, they do. And that doesn't mean that you play Ja Morant and you rush him back, or Jaren Jackson Jr. or any of your stars. But it does mean a healthy scratch for Ty Jerome and Scottie Pippen Jr. might be a bit of a stretch. Because it's not like those guys have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are NBA key rotation role player, 6th man of the year. Move the scale however you want. What have they done that allows for a coach, a GM, whoever makes these decisions, to say, you know what? You're good. Take the night off. when you're in the roster position that the Memphis Grizzlies are in. It was a missed opportunity in Memphis on Wednesday night. Cedric Coward could have gotten better. And you can argue that he showed some flashes compared to where he was on Monday. But how are these young players supposed to be put in the best positions to be successful when they are logging minutes with guys that they are not going to actually be playing with, who do not have the handle of the scheme that some of these veteran players that are not stars do? It's a missed opportunity for the Memphis Grizzlies. Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, there is somebody that did something pretty wells on Wednesday night. We're going to talk about Jaylen and his strong performance coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, which is formerly known as Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard us talk about here before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Enter Quo, which is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. Quo has a built-in AI agent that is a game changer. It answers calls after hours for you, captures leads, and keeps business moving even when you're off the clock. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. So I stand by my logic that it was a missed opportunity for the Memphis Grizzlies on Wednesday night. Cedric Coward did some good things, found his spots, a little bit more comfortable with playing time and reps that's going to occur. I think it could have looked better if he had an actual point guard that knew what was happening. It was Javon Small's preseason debut. And beyond that, a bunch of shoulder shrugs, if you ask me. It was a missed chance for the Grizzlies to improve. But there is a player that showed why the Grizzlies made the choices they did in the offseason. And again, massive grain of salt, preseason game. Jaylen Brown played in this game. Derek White played in this game for the Boston Celtics. And Jaylen Wells also played in this game. And Jaylen Wells looked good in this contest. Wells did a lot of impressive things, offensively in particular. 21 points on 9 shots. 3 of 5 from beyond the arc, 6 for 7 from the free throw line. Again, the turnovers are a concern. We talk about primary and secondary playmaking. Jaylen Wells is not quite ready for that fire. 3 assists to 3 turnovers. Not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. But we're talking about shot making here. And we're talking about the choice to move on from Desmond Bane here. Because there's a lot of folks, myself included, who saw that choice as a purposeful step back for the Memphis Grizzlies from contendership. Or at least thinking that they're contenders. It's hard to look at this roster on paper, even when healthy, and say that Ja Morant, Jaylen Wells, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Zach Edey as starters, that's a championship caliber starting 5. It's difficult to say. You're depending on 2 sophomore players, a guy going into his 13th season that had a rough go of it last season, a point guard who is not as available as you'd like, and that's probably a nice way to put it. Jaren Jackson Jr. is really the only dependable top 15 or so guy that's able to execute the role that you need him to execute in order for you to achieve your goals going into the campaign, at least in the starting lineup, the presumed starting lineup when everybody's healthy, which may never happen. Who knows? But Jaylen Wells looked the part. He looked like the guy backing up what Zach Kleiman and the rest of the Grizzlies front office is seeing in terms of being willing to move on from a Desmond Bane, who is a clear third best player on this roster. And now you have no idea who that guy is going to be. We talked about that here on Locked On Grizzlies numerous times. And maybe it could be by committee, right? DeMichael and I have talked a lot about Zach Edey being in a position in this offense to really take off once he returns to the floor. But maybe it could be a Jaylen Wells, who, depending on the matchup, the rhythm of the game, whatever the case might be, maybe he comes in and does the work to be a contributor offensively as well as defensively, because we know he can defend. We've seen that. He has the length. He has the willingness to do it. He's a solid to very good defender already, and I might be selling him short a little bit. But it's the increased offensive workload that is going to be something to monitor, not just in the preseason, but as the regular season gets going. Now, he may not have Ja Morant to play with in a preseason game, and he almost certainly will not have Jaren Jackson Jr. He obviously has logged some time with both of those guys in the past, entering his second season in the league. But this is a new role for Jaylen. That secondary creator of offense for himself and others. You can't necessarily depend on Jaren to be that guy. And Desmond Bane was absolutely that guy for the Grizzlies. So if you see him as a Bane replacement, he has to be able to do some of the things that Desmond Bane was capable of. He may not be as good as Desmond Bane. In fact, it's likely he's not as good as Desmond Bane. But he certainly fits what this team is trying to do in the backcourt, perhaps better than Desmond Bane, especially from a defensive perspective. And that's one of the biggest keys to all of this. We talked about it a little bit yesterday on the show. Jay Huff, a better overall talent, perhaps. Jock Landale, who apparently needed some time off after 3 years off. Sorry to revisit prior frustrations. But Jock Landale, arguably, fits the system better. Jaylen Wells as a bigger guard that can be next to Ja Morant fits what Tuomas Isalo and the Grizzlies want to do better than Desmond Bane did. And he certainly does it at a heck of a cheaper price tag. So if Wells is able to create off the bounce, to get to his spots, to knock down these threes, to get to the free throw line, that's a big deal. For him to be able to draw fouls, get contact, get those easy looks at the rim, that is a sign of progress and development for Wells. He has to be able to get to the cup because teams know he can shoot. He has to be a slasher. He has to be somebody that can do a couple of dribbles, pick it up, find a way to initiate contact, and either get a foul call and get to the charity stripe, or be a strong enough finisher where he's able to be efficient in that space even as contact comes. Wells showed flashes of that against the Celtics. And again, Jaylen Brown was out there. Derek White was out there. They weren't out there the entire game, obviously. They only played about, in the case of Brown, he played 20 minutes. I believe just the first half. Derek White logged 27 minutes, almost the amount that you would expect from a starter. Had a double-double. 16 points, 10 assists, only 1 turnover. That's my kind of guard play. But Jaylen Wells was easily the brightest spot in an otherwise dreary game where attendance was pretty low. Again, it's a preseason game where the stars aren't playing, but still, you had folks that were visiting from Boston saying it was the lowest attended NBA game or one of the lowest attended NBA games they'd ever seen. That's not something that you want posted about when your franchise is the team in question. But those that did watch the game and those that did attend saw Jaylen Wells do things that if you subscribe to the idea that this team can still compete with Desmond Bane gone, you need Jaylen Wells to do the stuff that he did against the Celtics on Wednesday night. And if Wells is able to carry that over and be consistent, that's a huge component to this team actually competing when the actual team is on the floor. Because friendly reminder, Santi Aldama, Jaylen Wells, maybe a Gigi Jackson-ish type of guy, Cedric Coward-ish, 2.5 to 3 rotation players actually played in this game. We already talked about why that was a mistake. Jaylen Wells playing was not a mistake because he is probably the one guy that you can point at and say, from game 1 to game 2, there was noticeable improvement, noticeable growth. Cedric Coward would be the runner-up there. He had 7 free throw attempts as well. And again, the shot not falling is one thing, but he had a couple of steals. He was active on that end of the floor, using that length, that wingspan. I thought Cedric did some good stuff too. But Wells was the belle of the ball. He was the star of the show. And he is arguably, especially among the guys that are currently active, or at least were active against Boston, he's the guy that matters the most in terms of the ceiling of this team. Can he be that secondary creator? Flashes, but also some poor decisions as well in this game. Can he be a shot creator for himself off the bounce? You can be a little bit more optimistic about that coming out of game 2 in the preseason. How much should that matter? Apparently, it doesn't matter much to the Memphis Grizzlies because they thought it was more valuable for Ty Jerome to get a breather with 3 days between games than for him to be on the court. but at least Jaylen Wells was able to make the most of his minutes as he played. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to close out this episode with a little bit of a concern about a guy that DeMichael Cole and I, my co-host on this show, were fairly high about this time last year, fairly high on. Not looking great for him at the moment. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown. You do that, you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. It's also fun to follow other players in the app, copying lineups with one click. And the new injury reboot feature is a blast. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. You got to love that. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Something that I wish I was more right about, and I know DeMichael Cole does as well, is Vince Williams Jr., the Bug, as he's affectionately called on Grizzlies Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it. By the way, I'm Joe Mullinax. Happy to be with you as we close out this edition of the show. Vince Williams Jr. doesn't look good. And again, it's preseason. Everything that you take away in terms of evaluation comes with that massive grain of salt. But Vince Williams Jr. played 18 minutes, and Vince Williams Jr. had 1 point on 7 shots, missed all 7 of those shots. Obviously, the 1 point came at the free throw line, 0 for 5 from 3. The positive of the game for Vince Williams Jr. is he had 4 assists to only 1 turnover. This is a guy that DeMichael and I have talked about in the past as a potential secondary creator and facilitator of offense, more so than G.G. Jackson, even more so than Marcus Smart this time last year. We thought that Vince Williams Jr. could be that guy. So that still is puttering around. But Vince Williams Jr. has lost his shot. He has lost his smile, you could argue, in terms of the way that he played the game before. And that confidence not really shining through, whether it's in himself physically. I think he said he was 90% healthy or something like that at media day. That's a concern because this is somebody who has been dealing with a serious ankle injury. And I don't want to belittle that or make that seem less important than it is. He had a serious issue with his ankle. And it takes time to regain confidence in that, especially for a basketball player. Ankle sprains are fairly common in basketball, but it could take some time to feel right, especially a player like Vince Williams Jr., who depends so much on lateral mobility, on the defensive end in particular, but it's true offensively too. The ability to cut, make direct movements off of picks and screens. If you can't do that believing that your ankle is 100%, it's going to be a test and a challenge. And obviously with a jump shot, it's hard to get any lift on it if you're not able to fully get up and around and through the attempts that you're making. So Vince Williams Jr. is somebody that it might be time to worry about because he struggled a lot coming back from the ankle injury last season. And Vince Williams Jr. has a team option coming up next year that the Memphis Grizzlies don't necessarily have to pick up. And right now, I would argue there probably wouldn't be picking up that team option because of the way that Vince Williams Jr. is bouncing back from this injury. Now, I want to stress there are positives to the game. We talked about the assists, the potential of him defensively. I saw it. If you're somebody that watched Vince Williams Jr. a couple of years ago when he first came to the team, you saw it too. DeMichael saw it. We believed in the defensive versatility, the intensity that he brought to that end of the court. We believed in his capacity to create shots for others, something that people at VCU, because I live in Virginia, for those of you that didn't know, in the Richmond area to be precise, Virginia Commonwealth University, where Vince Williams Jr. played, is right nearby. And people that follow the Rams that know that I'm a Grizzlies guy would come up to me and say, yeah, Vince Williams Jr. is doing stuff for the Grizzlies that he never did for VCU. That's part of the development system that was Taylor Jenkins's. But it's also a testament to Vince Williams Jr. and the work ethic that he brought to the pros to grow his game and to become a more complete player. But this ankle injury has derailed that momentum. That confidence seems very shaken. And you have a Grizzlies team that is in desperate need of one of these wings hitting. GG Jackson, not like he instilled a bunch of confidence on Wednesday night. And again, Joe, it's preseason. Yeah, it's preseason. But you can't say that these games don't matter and then get mad when players don't perform or the team doesn't do what you want them to do. There's a line that you walk there. Should anybody think that the Grizzlies are less likely to make the playoffs or the play-in because of a result of a preseason game where Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, and Brandon Clark didn't play, plus Ty Jerome and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope? The list goes on and on. No. The answer to that is no. But to go back to how we started the program, it was a missed opportunity to help these guys get into a rhythm. Nobody, I would argue, needs to get into a rhythm more than Vince Williams Jr. He has to rediscover that spark. He has to find that confidence. And maybe it is truly health related. Maybe he's not able to get over that physical, mental, emotional hump of that injury. And there's certainly no judgment from me on that end. I get it. Those are things that are difficult when you're a professional athlete to come back from and put yourself in a spot to compete at the highest level possible in the sport of basketball in the world. But he has to be in a position to be able to make the most of the minutes that he's given. Because again, he is a professional basketball player, emphasis on professional. If you can't do the job, the Grizzlies are going to try to find somebody that can. And Cedric Coward exists. And GG Jackson exists. And they have options. They may not be the best options in the world. But you know what? They've invested in Cedric Coward. They've invested in GG Jackson. Vince Williams Jr. is somebody that they've also invested in, but he is somebody, like I said, on a team option. He needs to show that he has value to this Grizzlies team if he wants to stick around. And there is value in his ability to create offense for others. There is value in his defense when he can be a threat to hit shots, when he can be a threat to stay on the court and be a direct impact defensive player. If he can't do those things, then he is probably not longed for this Memphis life. And I love Vince Williams Jr. I loved watching him play. I remember what it looked like. I know DeMichael Cole does too. It's one of the reasons we thought he would be the starter in front of Marcus Smart. We were half right last year. Marcus Smart wasn't going to be the starter, but Jaylen Wells is the guy that beat him out. We thought it was going to be Vince Williams Jr. So I believe in what Vince Williams Jr. brings to the table. His length, his versatility on both ends of the floor. I think that that's still there. But Tomas Isolo needs to prioritize putting him in positions to be successful. And you know how that's a lot easier to do, Coach Isolo, or anybody? It's a lot easier to do that when you have players on the court that can help facilitate and get those rhythms going. And it all comes back full circle to how we started the show. The fact that they lost to the Celtics is irrelevant. The fact that they made the conscious choice to rest numerous veteran / rotation players, that impacts things down the rotation. And maybe it impacts guys that aren't going to be on the roster in 3 weeks, but it also impacts guys that will. And that carries with it a lot of weight as the season approaches. Thank you so much for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. For your second listen, go find Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Basketball, Fantasy Basketball, on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As I mentioned earlier in the show, on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Grizzlies, on Friday's edition, I should say, DeMichael Cole will be back with you. You got to get down on Friday with DeMichael. I'm sure he'll have some takeaways from what was said post-game, as well as at practice going into the Saturday game as the Grizzlies close out their early season, preseason, I should say, homestand. I'm sure DeMichael will have lots of intel and things to discuss with you closing out our week here on Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're with him. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Make myself and DeMichael a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Become an everydayer if you're not one already. Be a part of what we're building here, our lovely, wonderful little corner of the internet. It's growing. It's fun. We have a great show that we're continuing to make better, and we hope that you'll be a part of that journey with us. For DeMichael, I am Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and I will catch you back here next time. DeMichael will be with you Friday. See you.